February. Energy, and more energy from the Utah Jazz have led to 6 straight wins. Hey, by the way, those two guys, Mitchell and Gobert, really, really good, and they make a massive difference for the Utah Jazz. And when do we see the new guys on the floor? Alexander Walker and Juancho Hernan-Gomez. Plus Power Ranking Tuesday, all coming up on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. Pow.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you very much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen every single day. We are free and available on all platforms for you, including YouTube, where you can hit that button right there, subscribe, hit the bell, and on any of your other podcast apps you can follow for free each and every day. Thanks very much for tuning in. Utah Jazz have won 6 straight. The noticeable thing that's different about the Jazz is the energy level. And, last night's a feel-good game where we all get excited, and frankly, the Rockets are awful. And that's as much as anything about last night's game. But that's not what we have been doing in many ways in other games against teams that are awful. So the fact that we took the number 1 offense in the NBA against the number 30 defense in the NBA and throttled them last night is exactly what we would expect out of the Jazz in many of the other games. And they really didn't, in my opinion, lay off the gas at any great deal. I'm sure Quinn probably has a higher standard than I do, but when you're up by 30 and you give up a 15-7 run, I'm not one who really worries about it a great deal. And the one thing we've talked a lot about this team this year, or one of the things we've talked about a lot this year, is shrinking the sample size, right? So that we just didn't play with a level of detail or tenacity that had us be able to kind of end games early. Instead, what we did against the Pacers and against the Rockets and some other games at home this year was we kind of fooled with the game, and then we allowed for the game, instead of getting to be a 48-minute game, to be like this 3-minute game, and then you're liable for Devontae Graham to hit a crazy game winner. Or, we got hit by a bunch of wild, crazy shots, but the problem was that we were in a circumstance to get hit by those shots. I've used the ping pong analogy all the time. If your older brother wants to play ping pong and he's way better than you, you want to play for the fewest amount of points possible. If he says play to 21, you're never going to win. But if you play to 5, maybe you got a chance. A few good, crazy things happen, and you sneak out a victory before the sample size extends to where you get to some accuracy. And the Jazz were playing games earlier this year where they shrunk the sample size. They didn't have the detail, focus, energy, and they allowed for they allowed for the game to get down to the 5-point 5-point ping pong game. And they and so in that sense, the Jazz did a bet, really that's where last night shows an impact, and some of these Orlando games is different. The energy level is more consistent and different. And frankly, that's Trent, Forrest, and Eric Paschall had a play last night where he missed a layup, sprinted back the other way, and actually broke up the pass. They pushed it ahead with his passing game, and then they made one extra pass, and he broke up that pass and knocked out bounds on a pure dead sprint. That's just a play guys weren't making. And those plays really matter. Donovan has come back from the concussion with super energy. Trent Forrest plays a lot of energy. Doka runs the ball, runs the floor really well. Those guys have made big-time plays. Now, whether that's a playoff sustainable model when suddenly everybody else is playing that hard, and do some of the weaknesses in, Trent Forrest, Eric Paschall, and Udoka Azubuike started the year non-rotation players somewhat for a reason. Now, Eric Paschall might be proving that some of that is wrong. He's making shots. He moves the ball. He dribbles well with both hands. He does some pretty his talent, his skill set's really pretty interesting. His body's unique at 6'6", 250. He can go both right and left. He's not like sometimes bigs only have 2 or 3 dribbles by which they can make a play. He seems to be a multiple dribble guy. Since December 1, he's shooting close to 50% from 3, which is not totally sustainable. But if he's over 35 or 36, I mean, this guy really could be Jay Crowder. That's the way I look at it. Paschall got knocked out of the rotation. He then comes back, if we go to January 5th, when suddenly COVID hits us and he goes back into the rotation. Since then, in 19 games, he's playing 17 minutes. He's shooting 52% from the floor, 44% from 3, 79% from the free throw. He's averaging 9 points, 3 rebounds, and assists. I got what Rudy Gay's resume is, and I understand what Rudy Gay's importance to us is. And I said this whole time when we signed Rudy Gay that that's an April or May signing. But Eric Paschall is going to be hard to take off the floor right now. He really, even on nights when he doesn't shoot it well, is just bringing an energy and a juice to what we do. And teams are going to leave him in that corner. Like, they're going to leave him the way they left Jay Crowder. It's a very similar player to Jay Crowder, and it's in many ways the player that we were lacking earlier this year. Trent Forrest, we've talked a tremendous amount about. He's doing a nice job. He did not have a great game last night. He was a little loose with some of his passes. Quinn reduced his minutes. That's kind of something nice. And then there's Danuel House, who, I thought played very well last night. Had one play in particular on a pick and roll with Eric Gordon where he got across Ron, and I talked about it on the broadcast, where he got back out in front in a way we haven't had a lot of our guys get back out in front. This is not a great shooter. There's nothing natural about that shot, but if you look at his shooting, and we could probably dig into some second spectrum numbers on this, and you look at kind of his years with James Harden and what he shot compared to his without James Harden, that's what's relevant here. So, Danuel House playing on the Houston team we watched last night, which is not a good team, is not designed to be a good team. That's not a criticism of them. It's not designed to be a good team. Is when he's on the floor with good players, then you end up with him getting open looks. It takes him a long time to get that shot off, and he's able to make some plays. If he's on a team that's not a very good team, and he suddenly is, trying to he's being forced to force up shots in traffic or that aren't, no chance. And so when you look at Danuel House and you kind of look at who he's played with, and when you go back, I think you have to look at his numbers with Harden and hope that we can get him the same looks that he got in those 3 or 4 years with James Harden. Because Harden made him, right? Harden got enough attention in the 17-18 season that when House was on the floor with him, which is how he spent most of his time, he got these wide open looks. And that's what, and can we do the same? And then earlier this year, when he's playing with Jalen Green and guys that don't have a clue, there's very little chance to, there's very, very, very little chance for him to have success. So that's fine. We can go back and look at it if you want to. I mean, you go back and look at the numbers in the 18-19 season and the 19-20. So House plays, he plays, really the 19-20 and 2021 seasons before the trade, or when he gets most of his time. And that's when he is able to kind of play with Harden and show that he's able to do some things. So, he's interesting. The other thing that's happened here is we had all this talk about secondary wing defenders, or actually extra wing defenders. We've almost created it here. Now we're missing the lead. The lead is that Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert are great. We'll get to that in a second. But there's actually a little something here that's taking place. I'm going to walk through the substitution patterns of last night and show how there's a really different level to who we are defensively right now than what we were before. And I'll explain that as we continue and kind of look at the personnel we're putting on the floor. Again, there's some flaws to this. It's not the the fail-safe. But we'll talk about it when we continue here on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by my good friends over at Murdoch Chevy, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. Yesterday, I kind of fired up when somebody emailed me out, and I got to send them over to Jason Creech over at Murdoch to set up an experience for he and his wife to go look at a Palisade. Hopefully, they'll give me an update on how it goes. The Murdochs have been in Utah for over 80 years. That's why they're not charging more than MSRP right now. As Blake said simply to me, I just don't want to be going to the grocery store, church, or somewhere around town. No, we took advantage of someone for a few $1,000s in a time of need where we could do it because the inventory is low. Inventory is still low, but there are some cars coming in. So get ahead of the game. Head over to Murdoch, either in Logan, Linden, or at 4646 South State Street. Test drive a car, get on the list, choose your car, and know when it's coming in. Have the excitement of the arrival date. It's kind of like having like cool shoes drop and having them arrive at your house now, but it's a car instead. Kind of awesome. 4646 South State Street. We've got two of the Santa Fe's. They're fabulous cars. The SUV lineup tipped off by the Palisade on the top. And then there's the Sonata and the Elantra, the North American car of the year. Check it all out at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street. If you're going to go over there, feel free to email me first, and we'll get you set up with a meeting with one of our VIP salesmen and have it for you. Built Bar's got the strawberry Built Bar out right now with 100% real chocolate and real pieces of strawberry in it. And they've got the Puffs mix box. Banana cream pie puff, coconut puff, and churro puff all in one box. 100% real chocolate, 100% delicious. If you have not had the protein-infused marshmallow puffs, how that became a protein bar is incredible. It is a candy bar that is a candy bar and somehow comes in with 130 calories is all, 2.5 fat grams, 4 net carbs, 4 sugars, and 17 grams of protein. Use the promo code LOCKED15 and join all of us in the Built Bar world and see what the protein-infused marshmallow craze is and find out about the coconut brownie chunk if you like coconut. It's all at Built.com, promo code LOCKED15. So the rotation last night is a sign of a little bit of something different. So the regular starting lineup's the same, and it's been great all season long. And, frankly, a lot of these problems are overblown. Let's make sure that we kind of go back to remembering the issue that is the lead. Is Donovan and Rudy played last night. Like, when Donovan and Rudy are on the floor, we're great. Like, that's just, and when Rudy was on last night, when Rudy was on the floor, it was 27-2. So our starting lineup is a plus 16.1. Our next lineup which is our kind of bridge bench lineup, which is now gone because of Joe Ingles, was an 18.4. Our fifth most used lineup, which is that same bridge lineup with Eric Paschall, was a 19.9. So those are our two main lineups. Our middle lineups weren't actually great this year, and there were some lineups where we really began to have some problems defensively this year. The lineup of Donovan Mitchell, Jordan Clarkson, Royce O'Neal, Bojan Bogdanovic, Hassan Whiteside is in the 19th percentile defensively. The defensive lineup of Donovan Mitchell, Royce O'Neal, Bojan Bogdanovic, and Joe Ingles and Hassan Whiteside was in the 17th percentile defensively. And the lineup of Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell, Royce O'Neal, Bojan Bogdanovic, Hassan Whiteside, our starting lineup with Hassan instead of Rudy, is in the 45th percentile defensively. So we have some lineups that, just weren't great. There's also just kind of an interesting little change to how we've changed here when we've started playing Trent, Forrest, now Danuel House, and Eric Paschall. And again, those three players are not the end-all, but they're very different than what we were playing. So the Jazz go through their regular rotation. Mike and Rudy check out. Hassan and Trent Forrest check in. All of a sudden, when Trent Forrest checks into the game now, at the 7:31 mark of the first quarter, he and Royce O'Neal are on the floor for the next 4 minutes. Now, this is a real offensive challenge to have both Trent and Royce on the floor together. But it is also now two good defenders on the floor at the same time. We now have two really good defensive players on the floor at the same time. And you've got Donovan out there who's really busting his butt defensively. The next substitution was Danuel House in for Royce O'Neal. You still now, for the next, as Trent Forrest stays on the floor for about the next 2 minutes, have two good defenders on the floor again in House and Forrest. Okay, we didn't, at this point, frankly, we used to have zero good defenders on the floor, right? Royce was off, and then we had, before Mike came back in the game, we didn't have, that lineup was Donovan Mitchell, Joe Ingles, Jordan Clarkson, Rudy Gay, and Hassan Whiteside. There's not a defensive presence there. There's not a lot of juice to that lineup and energy either. Eric Paschall is now coming in that bridge lineup, playing with Mike Conley, Rudy Gobert, but with Jordan Clarkson and Danuel House. So you at least now have House on the floor, who's a good defender and can probably guard the. Right now, if Danuel House is on the floor and we're playing a team with a wing scorer, he's guarding him. In the past, it was probably Joe or Jordan. It's not going to go great. House at least can now guard that guy. What we did last night is House and O'Neal basically played. One of them was on the floor at all times. Okay, so if House or O'Neal is on the floor at all times, you have someone that we think of now as a on-ball defender, defensive-minded player who's there. Then you add in the fact that Trent Forrest is on the floor for periods of time with one or the other. Any minute Trent Forrest plays, last night was just 12. And again, in the playoffs, this could be difficult. We have now 12 minutes with two defenders on the floor. I think of Eric Paschall as being pretty good defensively. I'd have to really dig into it. But Eric Paschall played 15 minutes last night. And so there's 15 minutes. Now, those 15 minutes is another where I would say we have another defensive-minded, energy, athletic player on the floor. That's really different than what we were doing before. Because our middle lineups, once Royce was off the floor, Royce was either the only defender on the floor or that we didn't have a defender on the floor. There once was a time when Joe could kind of use his length, his guile, and do it. This year was not that time. Rudy Gay, who I think we had hoped to be a little bit defensively, is not that good a defensive player right now. He may get better, but he has not been moving. He has not been moving as well as he would have been. So you add that, you're actually adding this really kind of changes who we are as a team right now in the fact that you have those guys on the floor. Now, there's limitations to it. I'm not actually even sure that it's working that well, frankly. I'd have to go look at our lineups last night. Our major runs were a 12+12 run with Rudy on the floor in his first stint, and then we went on a +11 run with Rudy on his second stint. When Rudy was on the floor, it was 27-2 when Rudy Gobert was on the floor in his first two stints on the floor. And then we really didn't have any other mammoth run other than an 8-0 run with Rudy back on the floor in that first quarter. So most of our runs happened, back with Rudy on the floor. We did have a 14-4 run with Royce, Boyan, Donovan, Clarkson, and Azubuike on the floor. That's, so Royce is on the floor as the single wing defender there. But there is now times where we have two wing, and the impact of always having one wing defender on the floor is that you can bounce guys back into an appropriate spot. So when Danuel House is on the floor for Royce O'Neal, and he's on the floor with Jordan and Mike on the floor now, at least House is guarding the number one defensive guy, where that used to be Joe guarding Steph Curry. I'd rather have House guarding Steph Curry than Joe guarding Steph Curry. That matters. Forrest is on the floor. Forrest has that matchup instead of Rudy Gay. Well, that's probably too small, but you got the concept. Or even if it's Jordan or Mike doesn't have that matchup. Now, Forrest has that matchup. That's important for Mike and Jordan to be fresh. Jordan's been really good for a while, by the way. Back to kind of what we want. Since about January 1st and just, right around December, he's just kind of playing with a much better calmness to who he is as a player. You start to look at these little, moments here, and that I think they matter. We'll see whether or not we can survive offensively in those circumstances. But it does make a difference that we now have a wing defender on the floor the whole time. let's not get so in the weeds on all this that we forget about Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. Like, that's really the other aspect of this. Donovan has been just totally brilliant in how he has played since he's returned. His energy is outstanding. His effort is sprint back defensively. He's leading with with a great example. It's really pretty outstanding to see him with this kind of juice. His rebounding, his assists, his ball, his game is just kind of perfectly impactful the whole time. Rather than, I would say in the past, he's been spurty, like he'd impact the game in spurts. I feel like since he's come back, he's been impactful in every minute of the game. And then, Rudy's great. Like, there's no question about it. I think we all kind of know how great Rudy is. But, when we just kind of remember that if Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert on the floor, which in the NBA playoffs is going to be probably 38 minutes of every game, when those two are on the floor, we're plus 16. We're in the 99th percentile offensively and the 89th percentile defensively. When you start to fiddle with our lineups and just get rid of players that aren't going to play in the playoffs or aren't on our roster anymore, and figure out what our lineups are, it's pretty amazing, why we've been concerned about things. I would say, I get it. We were losing games. We were playing somewhat lifelessly. There were all sorts of aspects that can really undo a team or a fan base. But like, we take Denzel Valentine, Elijah Hughes, Jared Butler, Joe Ingles, Juan Herman Gomez, Malik Fitz, Mia Oni, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Doka Azubuike, Zylan Cheatham off the floor, and we're plus 10.4. And that still leaves kind of a bunch of, Norvell Pell, I got to take off. I mean, like, we had guys you've never heard of playing. And at some point here, you either take Rudy Gay or Eric Paschall off the floor, and you probably take someone else off. We're in the 98th percentile offensively, only 57th defensively. So there's still an issue. But, the sky there was no reason to think the sky had fallen in January. And I think that's something that we should all probably remember. Today's show is brought to you by betonline.net. Football might be over. Basketball's in full steam for pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance, props, where the next fired coach is going to land. Betonline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or your mobile device to learn more about trends in action. Bet Online, where the game begins. The NBA championship odds sure are interesting. Let's check those out here in a second. Some fun ones tonight, by the way. We're keeping an eye on Miami's in Dallas, or Miami's playing Dallas. Miami's a 3.5-point favorite. We'd like Dallas to lose. Phoenix plays the Clippers tonight. Phoenix is a 13.5-point favorite. I don't know if we actually care. Here are the championship odds right now. Golden State plus 450. It is so wide open. Plus 450 is the best line out there. Phoenix is plus 450. Brooklyn is plus 575. Milwaukee is plus 575. Philadelphia is plus 650. Miami's plus 1,200, and we're up to plus 1,400. So if you believe you have to be under 1,000 to be a contender, there's 5: Warriors, Phoenix, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, and the 76ers. If you believe Miami at plus 1,200, Jazz at plus 1,400, get into it. Then Boston and Memphis are after that. Championship, Western Conference, Warriors at plus 175, Phoenix at plus 200, Jazz at plus 600. See if we move that meter. All right, let's get to power rankings. Before we get to power rankings, there's everyone's excited about Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Juancho Herman Gomez hit a corner three. When do we see them? I don't know if we see them. To a little bit of what we just talked about, there's only so many minutes. And frankly, Danuel House is ahead of Alexander Walker on the minutes. Paschall's ahead of Juancho Herman Gomez. Rudy Gay still's got to come back at some point. I think it's unlikely that I think you see either of them anytime without some people getting nicked anytime soon. And they have to learn the system and get ready. I think, as I said, when we got Juancho Herman-Gomez, I'm very comfortable with him in a breaking glass in case of emergency player. He's actually, I thought he was pretty good when he was in Milwaukee and, Minnesota and Denver. And in case of Nickeil Alexander-Walker, here's a guy who's really going to have to learn the system, adapt his game, figure out what he's going to do. And I know we're excited about him because he's new, the same way we're excited about Jared Butler, but there's actually not a spot, like there's not minutes to be had, and there's not minutes from someone else to take. So it's not as though this is, frankly, we're not in a developmental stage as a franchise. We're in a championship stage as a franchise. So you're not just going to go give a guy 20 minutes. So that, Azubuike's played great. He's just not going to play here for a while. We're not giving Azubuike 20 minutes a night just to take Rudy Gobert down to 20 so that Azubuike can develop. That's an insane idea, and equally as insane as actually these other ideas, because they're not going to impact what we're doing as a franchise. So there's nobody better in power rankings than John Schumann. So that's where we always start, kind of looking at the NBA power rankings and what everybody did after the trade deadline. John does amazing work. By the way, the West is up to 52% winning percentage against the East. Strength of schedule through week 17, we are no longer the easiest strength of schedule in the league. So here are the Phoenix Suns are number one. They have the second ranked offense, fourth ranked defense. They're remarkable. Number one clutch offense, can't lose a close game. Number one clutch defense. They're 22-3 in games within 5 points with 5 minutes left. The only team that's ever been better than that is the 15-16 Warriors. John Schumann has the Grizzlies as number 2 on their power rankings. They've won 8 of their last 9. They've led 6 of those 8 wins by 19 or more points. In the month of February, they're outscoring opponents by 35 points per 100 possessions before halftime. The Grizzlies have won 13 straight games against the 15 teams that are below 500. That's just, they play hard. 5th ranked offense, 7th ranked defense. He has the Warriors as number 3. Warriors lost again last night to the Clippers. The Warriors are the third quarter best team. Klay Thompson was incredible against the Lakers the other night. But they lost it. Miami, he has as the best team in the Eastern Conference. They've moved up. They're 5-0 since Kyle Lowry's returned from a 9-game absence and reunited their starting lineup. Has outscored opponents by 33 points per 100 possessions in 70 minutes, having allowed just 85 points per 100 possessions over 5 games. Wow. Number 5, he has this Philadelphia. James Harden leads the league in time of possession. Joel Embiid leads the league in usage rate. How do those two work? We'll keep an eye on it. He has them. He has the Cleveland Cavaliers at 6. Without Darius Garland, they still won the other night. They're the 19th ranked offense and 3rd ranked defense. He has Boston now at 7. The Nuggets have scored 120 points over 100 possessions the last 32 days. But on Friday, they scored only 102 against the league's best defense. Celtics defense has been the number 1 defense in the NBA for a while. Milwaukee, he has at 8. Denver, he has at 9. The Toronto Raptors, he has at 10. Hello? We're still out here. We're the Utah Jazz. Does anybody know we exist? The Utah Jazz are at 11. He has us at 5-0 on the 6-game homestand. This was written before last night. Their wins over Golden State and Orlando were the first time they've held opponents to under a point of possession since December. They haven't had Rudy Gobert. Donovan Mitchell's back. Jordan Clarkson is back. The Jazz have outscored their opponents by 61 points in Clarkson's 74 minutes on the floor this week. He says sometime the Jazz system could Jazz now include Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Juancho Herman-Gomez among 52 players with a usage rate of 24% or higher. Clarkson and Walker rank 43rd and 51 in true shooting percentage out of 52 players. Not great. Clarkson's been better recently. Dallas is 12th. Chicago 13, Minnesota 14th, and the Clippers are 15th on that. What? We are not in the top 10 in the power rankings? What about ESPN's NBA power rankings? Let me see if I can find their latest. Here is the ESPN power ranking. Phoenix 1, Golden State 2, Memphis 3, Miami 4, Milwaukee 5, Chicago 6, Philadelphia 7, Cleveland 8, Utah 9, and then Dallas 10. So let's go to the numbers. Because this is where we get rid of the emotion and we go to the numbers. So we go to 538 first and see where everybody's projected. The Suns 1, Warriors 2, Grizzlies 3 in the West. The Jazz are 3 games behind the Grizzlies at 52. In the East, they project the Heat, then the Sixers, the Bucks, and the Celtics for home court, with the Bulls and the Cavaliers not in the play-in game. Raptors, Nets, Hawks, Hornets in the play-in game. Crazy. In the West, Suns, Warriors, Grizzlies, Jazz, 52. Nuggets, 48. So 4-game spread there. We did play the Nuggets in the first round of the playoffs. We knew that. Dallas at 6 out of the play-in. Their 2-game advantage over the Timberwolves would be play-in with the Clippers, Lakers, and Pelicans in the play-in. Pelicans, Lakers, 9-10 play-in game. Think Brandon Ingram would like to knock the Lakers out? Now, full strength rating. Bucks 1, Celtics 2, Nuggets 3, Suns 4, 76ers 5, Jazz 6. Regular season, full strength, Celtics, Bucks, Suns, Sixers, Jazz. Pretty interesting. Chance of making the finals, Jazz at 17%. 8% chance of winning it. I mean, here's what it comes down to. Suns are 32%, Bucks are 31%. Celtics, they have a 27% chance of making the finals. Nuggets at 25% chance of making the finals. Sixers at 19%, Heat at 17%, Jazz at 17%, Grizzlies at 11%. You got a chance. And then we'll use Basketball Reference as our final note here on our power ranking look. It's interesting to look at. This is just a wide open, crazy race. Just to give you the projections in the East, they project Miami, then Cleveland, then Chicago, then Philadelphia, then Milwaukee, then Boston. They have Boston down at 6. Toronto, Brooklyn, Charlotte, and Atlanta in the play-in. Wow. Over on the West, Phoenix, Golden State, Memphis, 3 games ahead of Utah is the projection. We're at 4. We're pretty zeroed in there. Dallas is at 5, so we get Dallas in the first round in this case. Denver at 6, Minnesota, Clippers, Lakers, and they have the Spurs in the play-in game instead of the Pelicans. SRS is their simple rating system. In the East, they have Boston, Cleveland, Miami, Milwaukee as the top 4. In the West, they have Phoenix, Golden State, Utah. Overall, SRS, they have Phoenix as 1, Golden State 2, Utah is 3, Memphis is 4, Boston is 5, Cleveland is 6, Miami is 7. That's where the power rankings sit. It's Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Thanks for an active chat again today. We super appreciate it. Back with you tomorrow, Jazz Lakers. And then I'll have shows for you Thursday and Friday, off Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week. Have a great one. Thanks very much for tuning in. Enjoy yourself. Thanks for tuning in to Locked On Jazz, making it your first listen today. For your second listen, catch up on last night's NBA action with Locked On Now, either in podcast form at Locked On Now or on YouTube.